Before 2022, it would be safe to assume that if you weren't a Finnish resident, you hadn't heard about a company called Fortum. But today, this may not be the case, as Fortum has made one of the most expensive business blunders in the world, an oopsie worth of billions of euros. Before we move any further, I do declare that I am an idiot who skims Wikipedia articles and makes YouTube videos. So here is a grain of salt. Take it. To better understand how Fortum burned through money faster than a kid on Fortnite for some V-Bucks, we need to examine some backgrounds. So firstly, what is Fortum and what does it do? Fortum is a Finnish state-owned energy company, and it is one of the largest companies in Finland. That is the first thing we need to keep in mind. State-owned. The second thing is connected to Fortum's values and purpose. Most of the energy companies get a bad reputation because they tend to cause pollution and other nuisances. Fortum tries to stand out from this group by making the world a cleaner place. That is the second thing we need to keep in mind as we move forwards. In 2016, Fortum published its new strategy, in which it emphasized clean energy and at least 10% return of equity. Fortum had sold its portions of the electric grids in Finland and Norway, so they had heaps of cash burning in their pockets. It is nice to own cash, but if you are a company that aims for a 10% return of equity, a big cash position that does jack shit is not a great thing. Because Fortum is a state-owned company, it is under the strict supervision of the ownership steering department, so they do not have much wiggle room in Finland. However, if they would take their cash to global markets, they would have more say in the matter, and Fortum did find something to buy. Uniper. This was highly unexpected and it caused a lot of confusion. Uniper had been founded in 2016 by E.ON, and it was basically a dumping ground where E.ON could detach all of its businesses that had a bad reputation nowadays: gas and coal energy. Now to be fair, Uniper had both water and nuclear power plants. But its bread and butter was gas and coal energy. So with Uniper, Fortum would go exactly to the opposite direction it has stated in its slogan and strategy. Or at least partially. Because Fortum hadn't forgotten that they needed to make money. When it comes to profitability, Uniper would be a much better target to throw money at than the electric grids, so Fortum could reach its targets that it had set for the return of equity. So perhaps it would be justifiable for Fortum to buy Uniper. But there still was one massive slum in the room. The gas that Uniper was selling comes from Russia. Fortum had earlier investments in Russia, but with Uniper, Fortum would dial its Russia risk to 11. It seems that Fortum only saw the great dividends it could be earning, and perhaps this was all the due diligence and reason to invest they needed. So Fortum went #YOLO on Uniper. Fortum bought Uniper shares gradually and ended up paying around 7 billion euros to get around 75% of the company's shares. With the Uniper purchase, Fortum became one of the most polluting companies in Europe. They explained that the steady cash flow that Uniper would provide with its gas business would allow Fortum to invest into more greener ventures. However, Fortum was immediately caught in a shitstorm as Uniper opened a new coal plant in Germany. They did shut down other coal power plants, but still, Fortum's image as a green energy company took a hit. All parties were not happy about the Uniper deal, mainly the people at Uniper. They actually did pretty interesting publicity stunts during the deal. For example, Uniper bought an ad from Helsingin Sanomat where they were basically talking shit about themselves by telling how much they pollute, etc. to drive in the point that Uniper is not a good purchase for Fortum. The year 2021 was relatively smooth sailing as Uniper doubled Fortum's revenue. And for a time, it looked like the Uniper sale was a smart move. But the fun didn't last for long, because the price of natural gas peaked in late 2021, and that caused issues for Uniper. Because of these issues, Uniper asked help from Fortum in the form of a small loan of 8 billion euros. Fortum ended up financing Uniper's operations with 4 billion euros as loans and 4 billion in assurances. And this small loan was just the beginning, because when a shit called Vladimir hit the fan, Fortum was in the splash zone. Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine forced Europe to place sanctions on Russia. This then caused Russians to reduce the gas flow to Europe. Because the supply of gas suddenly crashed, but the demand stayed the same, there is only one way the price can go. To the moon, baby. Uniper had made long contracts with its clients and it was forced to sell gas at a set price. And because of these contracts, Uniper couldn't pass the costs to its clients, and thus they were losing a shit ton of money, tens of millions of euros daily. And since Fortum is the majority owner of Uniper, it is also losing money at an alarming rate. One could only wonder how a company that generates losses of tens of millions euros per day doesn't go bankrupt. Because Uniper's bankruptcy was not an option for Germany. Germany is moving to renewable energy production, but this process is far from complete, and because they have closed up nuclear power production, a decision that in hindsight is shittier than a newborn's diaper, fossil fuels are pretty much the only viable option to power and heat Germany. Because Uniper had an extremely important role in the gas distribution, it could not fail. There were a few possible ways the situation could be solved. Fortum and Finland feared that Uniper would be nationalized by Germany. This would mean that Fortum would have to sell Uniper at a low price and potentially lose the financing it had provided to Uniper. The outcome that Fortum was looking was reforming Uniper. Germany could take the gas business and the rest of Uniper could be formed into a new company. This way, Fortum could cherry-pick the favorable business units from the pile of shit, mainly the nuclear and water power plants. Since there were no options that would equally benefit both parties, negotiations were needed. Finland sent a small task force to the negotiations, and their main representative was Tytti Tuppurainen, the Minister of European Affairs and Ownership Steering. There were a lot of questions about the competency of this task force. Some have said that Minister Tuppurainen had little to none experience in these kinds of negotiations, so it is good to start from the deep end. But even if this was not the first rodeo for Minister Tuppurainen, one thing is certain. Against the Germans, Finns were outmatched, because Germany sent quite a delegation to the negotiations. In the end, the Germans emerged victorious from the negotiations. Germany would purchase Uniper from Fortum, but they would return the financing Fortum had provided to Uniper. Now then, what did this cost? Fortum bought its Uniper shares with 7 billion euros, and they had to sell them to Germany for 500 million euros. And if we take into account the dividends that Uniper paid for Fortum, the loss is only around 5.8 billion euros. This whole ordeal is as messy as a hoarder's kitchen, way more complex than I can comprehend, and full of interesting incidents, like for example, the Finnish Prime Minister communicating about the Fortum crisis with Germany via text messages on the Ruisrock Festival. But the most important question is, did Fortum realize the massive risk they would take with Uniper? Of course they did. Helsingin Sanomat interviewed 10 Fortum employees, and they claimed that the Fortum executives were fully aware about the existential risk that Uniper had on Fortum. They just didn't do anything about it. At the beginning, they tried to lower the risk, but they weren't able because Uniper's executives made it so difficult. When Uniper started to pay dividends, the willingness to do something about Uniper's gas business vanished. There might also be other reasons why this risk was not handled with the care it deserved. Where others saw a risk of billions of euros, the Fortum executives saw a possibility. Sure, they could lose a shit ton of money, but that loss spawn could earn them ungodly amounts of upvotes on Wall Street bets.